folks, welcome back to my channel. This video is brought about because Nicol from NicolReads, she found me about a month or so ago regarding Midnight Sun. And then we both discovered that we both have a fierce love of Twilight Saga. And then it became apparent that we have nearly identical tastes in reading. So we are putting it to the test. I picked 4 books that she loves. Mostly these are books that I wanted to read anyways. So this has kind of been a driving force to prioritize, but I'm gonna go ahead and direct you to her channel and you should definitely check her out. Subscribe to her channel because she's such a kind person. She actually started the Vampire Academy read-along, which she invited me, her, and 4 other girls to co-host with on that project. The books I have picked. First is Mistborn-Brandon Sanderson. Everyone seems to love this book and it was definitely already on my TBR. I'm just actually at this time a little over halfway through. The next one is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. It's been on my TBR for a really long time. I definitely think that it's something that's going to be a new favorite. Like all of our favorite dystopian in one. Reminiscent of Hunger Games and Game of Thrones. The next one is Fable. I don't actually own a copy of this. I have already finished this book. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Fable by Adrian Young. I think she had received an arc over this book and read it and did a review on it, and her review is just raving reviews, and that's why I had chose this book. And then the next book is Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McGuire. This is actually the first in a trilogy, I think. There's either 3 or 4 books on the series. I've had my eye on this book for a really long time, and then I recently just acquired this copy of this book. Perfect timing, because I really wanted to read it. She basically says this is a guilty pleasure of hers. I'm a little bit nervous about this book because I believe it is a YA. I'm finding more and more I'm getting a little bit older to really enjoy some of the popular YA tropes of Twilight generation. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. I honestly probably would not have picked up this book otherwise, but I didn't even read a synopsis of this book and I was completely expecting something else. I totally thought that it was going to be like a fairy tale because it said Fable. And she looks very fairy-esque. I did not expect this to be a seafaring pirate adventure. This is about a girl named Fable who's basically just dumped on an island. Her mother just died in a shipwreck. Her dad and his crewmate, this guy, one of his crewmate, gets her and takes her to this island and then just like leaves her there to fend for herself. So for 4 years, Fable manages to survive for 4 years on this island among thieves by learning to be thief and by dredging the sea and selling pyre to earn enough coin to track down her father and hold him to a promise that he gave her. This book is amazing. First, I read this on audiobook when I first started this project, and I just think I wasn't in really the best mood to read it at the time because I was very much into like reading a lot of gothic and like darker stuff, and I also thought that this was going to be about fae. Maybe I was just too distracted when I was trying to listen to it. So I'm so glad that I found this at my library like a few days ago, and I flew through this book. Not exactly pirates, although I guess you could equate what they do to piratism, but they're never like considered pirates. The writing is beautiful and atmospheric. It was just so easy to get wrapped up and consumed in this story. The pacing is perfect. The descriptions are wonderful and unique, and the way she describes things just all play into and add to the atmosphere. The plot is clever. All of the characters are really good and likable too. Likable? Are they really likable? I don't know. I really enjoyed all of the characters. I guess you could say that some of them are not as well fleshed out. I don't really think that they needed to be though. Much like their way of life, you only know exactly what's necessary when it's necessary. Everyone in this world survives by lies and secrets. And thank you, I have to point out the characters that are tough and smart, but they still make poor choices. And they can still get beat up and injured, like nobody's a ninja. Have a weakness like real human weaknesses. So much happens in this book, keeping it a fun page turner. But still, the descriptions are really rich. So I wanted to point out though that Fable has this like special affinity for something. I'm really trying not to spoil anything, but she has a special affinity for something which I think is actually divulged in the first chapter, but just in case. There's like nothing supernatural about this book. However,
her affinity for this thing seems kind of on the cusp of being a little bit supernatural. So I really don't know, but it's still a really cool gift. I really love the subtlety of the relationships in this book as well. They're definitely there, but it's like all said in small gestures or decisions, but you can never be 100% sure of what you think is going to happen. I just really liked that, like puzzling it out. Does he feel a certain way or does he not feel a certain way? Maybe he's just nice. Just never really could know 100%, except kind of when we get towards the end and this certain profession of love comes out. It's a little bit over the top for me. Like once we got there, it was pretty dramatic. But the buildup was really perfect. That also really goes into how well the author can like write dialogue, body language, emotions. I really love when characters can allude to their meaning that we as the reader are intelligent enough to pick up on versus everything being spelled out for us. I just cannot wait to read the next book. Also, she has another series. I think it's The Girl the Sea Gave Back. Hold on. I'm going to look. It's been on my radar for a while. All right. The Sky and the Deep series. And oh, The Girl the Sea Gave Back is book number 2. I was thinking that was the first book. Okay. Well, anyways, I've heard that one's such a phenomenal book. I definitely want to read that series as well. And then the second book to this one called Namesake is going to be published March 16th, 2021. Yeah, so I'm just really excited about that. I cannot wait to read it. I really wanted to share some passages from this book just because the writing is just so beautiful to me. There are definitely some more in here that I wish I could find. There's a lot of description of like when she's diving into the sea and they talk about the salt air and I don't know, it's just so beautiful. I didn't include any of those passages in here, but just trust me, the environment is just all so beautiful. But let me go ahead and share a few. Oh, that's right. I wanted to point out this too. I've never read a dedication page like this before. This is amazing. For Dad, it took a whole book to say goodbye. And then there's all of these coordinates. And I literally went through the book and tried to see if I could pair up the coordinates to certain pages. Like maybe it was like a specific message to her dad. I don't know. I am interested in anyone has brought that up in any like author interviews. So the first line is, "That bastard was leaving me again." That's a really good first line. Another passage is, "Flames flicked on the candlestick in the breeze, the white wax dripping down the landing like raindrops on the deck between us. The crisp golden skin still sizzled as she reached forward with a piece of torn bread, soaking it into the juices pooling in the bottom of the tray. Baked plums simmered in cinnamon, honey, steamed inside the bowl." Does that not just make you so hungry? All right, the last one I have picked out. "Like light cast over the morning water, it became new. Every moment that lay ahead, like an uncharted sea, this was a new beginning." I feel like I didn't even pick out the best lines. I kind of want to own a copy of this book now just because I would absolutely reread it again. It's not like bogged down. So much is well researched. So good. I love it. Oh my gosh. And finally, that ending, okay? That ending, how can they do this to me? Only one person is sticking out in my mind. This book has me like so stressed out. I just don't know what's gonna happen. I can't believe I have to wait till March. At least it's only a couple months, but I have to wait a couple months to find out what's gonna happen. Needless to say, I loved this book. I gave this book 5 stars. I have the same feelings about this book as Nicol.
So I don't know if there's spoilers beyond this point. I feel like if you're watching this, you should expect spoilers. There's just no other way. Move on to my feelings about Mistborn. Now this one I have not finished. I'm a little over halfway. So I haven't been reading this book in the last like 4 days. It's been killing me just because I wanted to give a uninfluenced halfway point update of my feelings on this book and what I think. I love this book. I really do. This says Mistborn on it, but like, and it says Mistborn Trilogy 1, but this is also considered the Final Empire as the title of the book in the Mistborn Trilogy. I don't know why, but these titles are really fucking with me. Anyways, the characters are amazing. We follow Vin. She's a 16-year-old girl who discovers that there's more to her luck than she thought. She runs and survives with thieves, but she knows that her value is futile. Then there's this infamous survivor of Hathsin named Kelsier, or Kel for short. He's mostly, you know, in a lot of books when they introduce a character by their full name and then they only ever address them as their nickname, it doesn't do that. We continue to know him as Kelsier primarily, and then there's like one or two characters who call him Kel for short. Kelsier finds Vin. He takes her in and recruits her for this uprising he has planned. And he teaches her about her luck. The politics are just complex, layered. There's a super long history. There's tiers of society as far as like wealth, power, influence. The world is atmospheric and mysterious. And there's something big that I don't know what it is yet has changed the world. And this event, I believe, is called the Deepness, which at this time, we don't know what that is. There's a class of people called the Keepers, and only some of them have even been around long enough to know what the world was like before this Deepness. There's also Obligators, and I think they're like the Keepers, as in they're quite old. But mostly only the Lord Ruler knows exactly what happened. The Lord Ruler is like this god figure. He's immortal and all-powerful, but is he? The magic system is so unique. I love how layered and complex. There are restrictions and consequences, limitations. I love that it's based on science or physics. Its rules lay in what is true for force and weight, speed and momentum, basically physics. Within this magic system, there's also tiers of power. So let's go ahead and just lay it all out. They're called allomancers, which is a generalized term for people who can consume and burn or utilize these metals, but only pure source of allomantic metals, not just any kind of scrap metal, because scrap metal can actually kill them. There's pushing and pulling and inner and outer metals. Each metal is used for a different purpose, and they call it burning metal. They can instinctually burn or reflexively burn, as Vin had grown up doing without even knowing she was doing it. They can idly burn, extinguish, or flare the burn to control its use. There are mistings, which are a class of people within this magic system. They're called mistings, and they can only burn like 1 or 2 metals. However, they tend to become experts in their one area. Then there's the rare Mistborns that can burn all of the metals. However, while they can have a range of all the different metals, it's difficult for them to be a complete expert within all of those areas. And I think that that's also very interesting, and the system and how the metals are used for situations is just so astonishing how complex Sanderson has worked up this magic system. There are not words, just the pure like genius of creating the magic system. So I've literally just finished the part where Marsh has taught Vin about sensing metals, and he is what you call, I guess, a smoker. So he can basically hide allomancers because some of the obligators can sense when someone is burning a metal. This also adds a new fresh dynamic, as while like our heroine is very strong, she's not invincible, where a lot of they just make it so easy. There's this big conflict, but ultimately the heroine wins, and they've just come from nothing and they are the ultimate power. And that is just never gonna happen within this world. At least that's what I assume, just based on the system that they've set up so far. Where I'm at right now, I just feel like I'm utterly consumed in finding out what is up with this Lord Ruler. Well into chapter 12, between 10 or 12, where before I figured out that right here, since the beginning, this has all been the Lord Ruler. I figured that out. I went back to each chapter and read all of them together. While he's known to be terrifying and cruel, I feel like maybe he's just really misunderstood. So my big prediction at this moment, Kelsier warns Vin a few times not to like get dependent, like when she uses the metals to overcome her pain. I feel like our Lord Ruler didn't have anybody like Kelsier to tell him the restrictions, and maybe he got too dependent on burning the metals. And I think over the centuries, this dependency is causing him to go mad. He's hallucinating shadows following him. And I also think this mysterious 11th metal that I have no idea what it is yet, I think that he is burning it. This metal is. Maybe it's like a drug. I feel like maybe if he quit burning, maybe it would kill him. That's kind of why he's been basically immortal. There's this good versus evil thing going on. And I really find it interesting that these Skas are the big time underdogs, and they're really not forthcoming with this uprising at all. Kelsier is actually having to manipulate them heavily to get a large enough following to create this army that he promised this Yiden guy. I think when we first meet him, we're like, oh, he's going to be our hero. He's starting an uprising against the evil Lord Ruler. But I feel like maybe it's totally twisted. Maybe he's really not quite the hero type. I feel like he's fighting for something else. For instance, this mayor person. Also, his brother calls him out on his true motivations. His brother was like this real, like, started the uprising first, and then I guess maybe the cost was too high and he bailed out. And his brother has now been spouting his same words. But Marsh called him out and said, you're not doing this for them. You're doing this for you, kind of thing. And this is about Mare or whatever. And, or maybe that's what they want us to think. Maybe he is changed. On Vin's side, Vin, I kind of like that she was like this thief and she's had to learn how to act like a noble woman. And she has met this Lord Leland. Now, I really don't like how easily Vin is charmed by him, because I feel like it's not consistent with her character. Her character was very reluctant to trust Kelsier and them, and she even still doesn't trust them. But then this Lord Leland comes around and she's like, ooh, is he gonna talk to me? I think that's pretty lame. I almost wonder if it will be more, because there's a lot of emphasis on this character. He's important. I don't think it's as simple as he's the love interest. I really wonder if he's a notorious fuck off going to be and working towards this rebellion, because that would be actually really interesting. Somebody that you would like never expect to actually rebel. All right, let's do a quick Mistborn update. So I have just about under 100 pages left. I had to update right before we get to the ending. So much has happened. I could probably talk about the ins and outs of this book in like great length, but as it is, I still have 2 more books after this to talk about. So we're just gonna stick to the 2 biggest things. First, Sean. The showdown between Vin and Sean just happened. Oh my gosh. Also, she points out who her father is, and it seems to me that Kelsier understands the gravity of that, but the reader doesn't, I don't, and neither does Vin yet. She does mention that she doesn't know his name, but the whole buildup and unraveling of Vin and her powers and how she is very humble about her ability. Even Kelsier seems very impressed with how fast she learns. She doesn't really put too much thought into it. She just goes and reacts, and then I really like that. But as we are just starting to figure out, there's something else even more spectacular about her gifts. But like the slow buildup and the unraveling of it all, I think it has something to do with who her father is now. Lately, she has been saying that she can like feel the influence even while she's burning copper. Like she can feel the influence of the Lord Ruler. Like the Obligators, I think she can feel their presence. Kel and a couple other people have said that's absolutely impossible, but she swears that it's there. So I think that this is going to be the start of learning more about her. She is not just a Mistborn. I think she's even stronger than a Mistborn because of who her dad is. Don't know why yet. Copper protects them from Inquisitors and Obligators and the Lord Ruler, but I'm thinking that it doesn't as they think. However, one thing I do really like about Vin's reaction to when she says like, no, I know what I felt, they all say that like, that's impossible. She's like, well, what do I know? Like maybe I'm just imagining things. I really think she has a power that's equivalent to like an Inquisitor and Obligator. Like we're getting some answers, and now I have even more questions. One, why do the Inquisitors even follow the Lord Ruler if he's such a tyrant? oh, well, because he's really powerful. But maybe she's gonna be like the person that can bring down the final empire. Her power has to be able to combat the Lord Rulers eventually in this trilogy. Am I right? I mean, I'm getting way ahead of myself, but I'm just trying to like fill in some questions here for myself. And also, when it comes to obligators, inquisitors, I tend to use them interchangeably because I don't feel like I've really exactly pinpointed the difference of their powers. I mean, they're both super strong. They have different jobs, but I just don't know why they're different, I guess. Because aren't they all Mistborns? Well, Mistborns on crack.
The audio on this clip was just too bad, but this was literally my devastation after a certain character met his shocking end. I was completely just shook, and you can't hear it in this video, but I'm like, that's some Game of Thrones shit right there.
I'm going to be finishing this book tonight, though. Brandon Sanderson has a very special knack for human emotions and the sliding scale that emotions and opinions take. So many books are just like black and white. They are this way. Maybe they change their mind and then their character is this way. However, emotions are not that simple. He has just nailed it on the head how to write, how they are on, like I said, on a sliding scale. From 1 minute to the next, they're dependent upon how heated someone is in the moment to later on how it affects them, or something else happens and then it digs up emotions of a previous event that happened. That is some strong coffee. I've officially finished Mistborn, and oh my gosh, I just like want to turn around and reread it again right away. I also just want to start the next one, but I don't have it. I do actually have it checked out on audiobook, but there's just no way. I just cannot. I need to buy the next book. So last night, Stephanie Bookish hosted some reading spreads, and so I was hanging out with Nicol and Ebony and Stephanie on her channel. And we hung out for about like 2.5 hours. It was so much fun, and just like gushed about all kinds of books. And we talked about Mistborn quite a bit, a bunch of other books too. And then we did a couple of reading sprints. I read about 20 pages. Yeah, that's right. So I read about 20 pages during that time. And then I finished up with the last 20 pages. And I don't even know like how to put it into words. I kept thinking that the Inquisitors were like these mindless creatures. They're always described as creatures from our main characters, and they just kind of attack. They don't really like have meaningful conversations, so I think they're just kind of portrayed as like these mindless creatures, and they have like these nails through their eyes. Well, apparently they have a big secret on it. That was insane. The mist wraiths, and then what was that guy's name? The guy that she had been living with in Kelsier's house. That whole thing. Okay, when I found out that thing seems so human compared to what we know. The biggest thing is the Lord Ruler. First of all, I'm actually shocked that we wrapped that up, which means there's something much bigger, much bigger. And I can't even attempt to try to guess what it is, but I think it's going to come along when we learn more about this deepness. The mists, they respond to Allomancers, so I think that's going to be like playing into something really big. The Lord Ruler, and how Vin like figured it out, like that is so crazy and so cool. And like once you figured it out, just like with the Inquisitors, once you figured it out, it like wasn't even that hard. I'm gonna have to go ahead and just like stop talking about this right now, because otherwise we'll be here for 2 hours. Obviously, I gave this book 5 stars. I love this book. So Nicol says that this is probably one of her all-time favorite new books. I actually have to agree. Like, I believe that our feelings on this book are identical. So let's go ahead and talk about Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McGuire. So this book, first of all, I thought that this book was a young adult book, and it's definitely not. That I also had it in my mind that this book was kind of like supernatural or fantasy in nature, and I was completely wrong. I would say that this is more of a new adult. It could be an adult, but I think new adult is actually a better classification because these kids are college age students. So, and our main character is 19. Our main character, Abby Abernathy, and her best friend America come to this college miles away from home to get a fresh start and escape her past, Abby's. Just starting off, that's a very loyal friend to drop her life to be with her friend. They've been at this school for quite a while, and her friend America has been dating this guy. They are roommates. And then Abby meets this guy's cousin. He is the epitome of a bad boy. From his leather jacket to the fact that he smokes, drinking, womanizing, and this underground fight club thing that he's got going on. I actually really liked it. Even though it's quite cheesy and cliche, I could dig it, even though it made me like roll my eyes. Abby is like the exact counterpart. She's played up to be this goody two-shoes. I hate saying that, but because it sounds very like I'm making fun of her for being a good student and things like that, which obviously I find that very commendable. But they made her painfully opposite in every which way. They also refer to her cardigans and her virginity on a number of occasions. So right off the bat, we're setting up for the very most dramatic pair that you could think of. So first and foremost, it is a romance. I think it could be most characterized to a hate to love romance. Abby hates Travis so much at first, to the point where she's almost acting like she's afraid of him, like he's a deviant. And she's completely powerless. Then they decide to like become friends, which pushes us so far in the other direction that people can't even tell that they're not together. The first thing that throws them together is that their dorm room doesn't have water, and they said it's going to take about 3 days for it to get fixed. So America and Abby move in for the next 3 days at Abby's boyfriend's house, where Travis also lives. Travis allows Abby to take his bed, and it was kind of funny, the whole thing. But then he, instead of like sleeping on the couch, he decides to sleep next to her. And while it's kind of cute and adorable in a flirty way, then Abby follows him out to this place and she like holds her own. And so it's the first sign where we kind of start getting into she's not as goody two-shoes as she plays up to be. Then this whole bet happens and she ends up going to be living at his place for like a whole month. It starts going around that they're always together. To counter this, Abby is so adamant. She cares so much what everybody thinks, and she's like, we are not together, wanting to make this big production so that nobody can think that they're together despite their arrangement. So she decides to start dating somebody. Travis does some stupid shit, and you could tell at this point like they like each other, but they're not gonna tell each other. Start this whole bouncing around, whole roller coaster, and miscommunication, misdirection. They kind of like start to get close, but then something will happen and throws everything, any progression, spins it the other way. A constant whirlwind. Their drama is made further shocking and cringeworthy by the extreme public outbursts, this high school drama surrounding their reputation and all of their private business, becoming like a Jerry Springer reality TV show. Now, as far as like the high school drama-esque reputations, maybe resident students at college deal with this kind of thing. I don't know, because I only ever went to night school and online school and community college. But it seems a bit unreal to me. But then we also have the element of frat boys, which it just gave us a reason for the stereotypical frat boys to be giving him shit. I think it didn't really matter that much. Usually I really hate this sort of thing. And in general, I really just hate the shock factor and the self-centeredness of bringing everybody else into someone's relationship. I hate airing dirty laundry. Let's also not forget to mention, I don't know why this was one of the first things I had to mention, but Travis starts off calling her Pigeon. And throughout the entire book, I was just like, by like the first chapter, I was like, take a shot every time he says pigeon. There was a point in here where it was really funny because she brought it up, and like, while she didn't like it at first, she didn't really put up that big of a fight with him calling her pigeon. I hate pet names to begin with, but especially stupid pet names. She also gets called Cookie, which is kind of weird to me because it's like was it her dad that called her Cookie? Yeah. During one of their fights, she's like, oh yeah, pigeon, that's really cute. A bird that shits all over the sidewalk. And I was like, thank you for bringing it up, but like, really, are you really that upset about it? So Travis, we get to know right off the bat, he's this like terrible, womanizing, sexist prick. He has absolutely no shame. He's super snarky, and I liked him. I'm a little ashamed to say how much I liked him. I liked that, as despicable as his actions are, he did kind of have a point in the beginning when he was talking about how he didn't make any of these women any promises, and they're all consenting adults. And he's got a point there. If he has this reputation of being such an asshole, these women still flock to him knowing his reputation. And like, they actually have a big discussion about it. They're like, yeah, all these girls think that they're the special one. I mean, it's still really shitty though. Also, just so you know, they do say whore a lot. They consider these girls bimbos. They kind of treat them like they're stupid. There's a lot of slut shaming in this book as they talk about Travis's cast-offs. And yeah, okay, it's problematic. So later on, they start like sorting out their emotions. Travis becomes completely different. He becomes scary and creepy and ultra controlling. His temper, like, we kind of knew he had a bit of a temper problem, but like, he's super scary and creepy and violent. So all of this that just happened, that I just talked about, all happens before we even reach the halfway point of this book. It literally felt like this book should be over, and I was like, there's still a whole, like, another half of this book left. So needless to say, a lot happens in a short amount of time, and I do appreciate the hopping back and forth from one drama to the next. Speeds things up, you know? Keeps things entertaining. Something shocking would happen, and you can never just get comfortable with this book. So let's go ahead and talk about the writing. Mostly, I feel like she's definitely got a talent for making me feel all the feels. I do think it was really odd to have such a long timeline, and as I said, a bit of a rocking back and forth and jumping around as it did. The overarching message of the entire book definitely wasn't the events that happened, or it was just to bottle up their relationship and consider it as a whole. It was crazy. I mean, the title is called Beautiful Disaster. Like, they want to show that this couple, their entire relationship is a fucking disaster. First, they hate each other, and then they like each other, and then they're friends, and then they're constantly together and then breaking up, and together and breaking up, and they bring everybody into their relationship, and they drag everyone down around them, are just so dramatic, and they are not likable characters. They're both dumb, and you're like, at first I was like, why does he want her when she keeps pushing him away like this, and like, she's being ridiculous? On the other hand, you're like, why does she stay with him? He's scary and violent and controlling. At the end of it, I'm like, I hate both of these characters, especially them together. They are truly toxic. I honestly have no clue what this book should be rated. At first, I think it's kind of a 3 because, like, I kind of hate that I love this book. So it's in the middle because these people are horrible people. But then I decided to bump it up to a 4 because it truly rattled me. It kept me up all night. I read this in probably 3 or 4 sittings. Oh, I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning reading this. And then I was like afraid that I wasn't going to get any sleep that night. And I was like, I can't be that tired the next day. So I forced myself to go to sleep, woke up, rolled over, picked up my book and finished it before I even got out of bed in the morning. Kept me engaged. And I think any book has got to get credit for keeping you that engaged to where you just can't put it down. Also, it has taught me that I guess I kind of like trashy romances, and I really want to read more in this genre. So do Nicol and I have these same feelings about this book? Nicol specifically called it a guilty pleasure, and I would definitely have to agree. This is, however, the first in a series. I don't know why or how my morbid curiosity might drive me to suffer these characters for another book. I definitely think that I like the crazy dramas that are like crazy versus like the cute dramas. I have read a few books that are like romances that are just more like cutesy and heartwarming, and I just kind of generally like how can you not like them? But at the same time, I'm just kind of like, eh. This one stirred up so much more emotions, and so I think I'm definitely more into the like crazy dramas. I guess I'm just trash for shock value because there was that other book, GoneGirl. These two characters, their relationship was a fucking disaster, and I ate that shit up. So apparently this is starting to be a trend in my taste.
Whoo! Next up, Red Rising. This one is really tough to talk about because I don't want to rag on my friend's favorite books, okay? Let me just preface this by saying I really wanted to like this. I wouldn't have picked this book if I didn't think I was going to like it. There was no doubt in my mind that I would love this book. So this is shocking and seriously disappointing for me as well. Now let me go ahead and explain this book. I probably should have done that first. This is an adult dystopian novel which takes place on Mars. Well, in space, I think it starts out on Mars. So it starts out in the mines on Mars. Darrow is a young man. He is a red. In this world, classes are segregated by colors. Reds are at the very bottom. They're miners and slaves. They don't really live long lives and they grow up really fast, get married really young. Darrow is married and he is 16, something like that. On the other side, golds are at the very tippy top, and there's a whole bunch of rainbow colors in between. This book always gets related to Hunger Games meets Divergent. It says something else. Oh, Hunger Games and Game of Thrones. I guess it's a fair assessment. I think it's primarily because of the class system, and a lot of the jobs are associated with those colors. There's also this big game that takes place. It's a brutal game. We'll get into my thoughts about that in just a second. I didn't really understand the purpose of the game. This book made me feel really dumb. I feel like it took a lot of patience to get into it. I really liked the beginning, but then there was this really big gap between part one. Knew he had like the short end of the straw, but in life, but like he was okay because he had his family and his friends and he loved his wife more than anything. But then when that changed, he kind of changed, and like everything he believed was changed when he got the truth of the world. Like he had no clue what Mars was like. He was just kind of stuck in his little bubble in the mines, and he thought that that's all there was on Mars. And I really liked that realization that he had been lied to his entire life. Was it his uncle kind of had like knew what was going on and was behind like saving him, all this stuff. I liked all of that. I thought it was really interesting. But I think what frustrated me the most was this huge gap. We learn all about that up until the point where he gets really angry and he changes his mind and he decides he is going to fight and lead this revolution for his wife, for all the lies. He goes through this huge transformation to change his body to become a gold. This one thing I thought that was really different is I really liked, like, once I took the whole story and looked at it, I really liked the difference between like the reds and the golds. While the golds are mentally think a different way, but they're built a certain way. So they take Darrow and they change him to look and act like a gold, but nothing can change what he grew up with mentally as a red, and he constantly has to try to not let that show. And I really liked moments where he meets somebody and he realizes he's not the only plant. He meets a few people and he goes, there's something about this guy that's familiar. Oh, he said this thing. A gold would not say that thing. He's like me. So I really liked those moments, but for the most part, the middle of the book, I just was bored. It was just very excessively violent. I'm sorry, this is where I'm starting to rag on your favorite book, Nicole, but I really did not connect to the characters. It just took so much effort to try to tune into some of the conversations, but little moments like that would stand out to me, but everything else was just kind of like a blur. And then the ending, I liked the ending. I think there's enough of it where I would genuinely want to pick up the next book, learn more about some of the things that I actually liked, but I think it was just mostly the writing choices I wrote, so I'm like really trying hard to overlook some of that, or trying to think that like maybe did it intentionally that made it really hard to like this book. Yeah, in retrospect, I guess I can appreciate a little bit more kind of looking at the whole thing and the whole message. From part 1 to part 2, okay, he has transformed, he has become a gold, but then all of a sudden, he wakes up and I don't know where he's at. I don't know if he's still on Mars. I don't know anything. And I felt like it's only like through some of the conversations that those details kind of unravel. I didn't even know it was a game. I didn't know. The only reason I knew he was part of a game is because I watched so many reviews on this book that told me it was in a game, because when I actually read the words, nothing about it cued me into that it was like a game until like I was so lost. That's where it made me feel really dumb. So I am really sorry. I know some people get really upset with their favorite books being ragged on, so I don't want to rag on my friend's favorite book anymore. Overall, I really just did not like this book. Also, I did want to point out that I wonder if the difference of our receiving this story is because Nicole have not read Hunger Games yet. I wonder if it makes a difference that I read it before reading this. And so I'm really curious to see how you like the Hunger Games. Also, I say that I'm not really opposed to violence. I mentioned that this had a lot of violence in it. What was it? Wasn't there a point where they were like talking about definitely adult content where I was just like, I don't know. So I say that I'm not really opposed to violence in books. However, I can't really say for sure that I know. I haven't really read many that rely heavily on violence like that. It's possible that I just really don't like a lot of violence like that, which I think could make a big difference too. Wrapping up this experiment, this whole purpose of this video was to compare my taste to Nicole's taste. And I think 3 out of 4 is amazing. I think Mistborn would be easily my top favorite book. It just completely has me. Its genius behind the magic system is just phenomenal. And then I would have to say Fable, because just amazing, beautiful writing, atmospheric. I love really atmospheric books. The excitement and anticipation for the next book, how fast-paced it was. Everything about this book was so good. And then Beautiful Disasters. This book just had me. My feelings were exactly the same. If like verbatim, guilty pleasure is exactly what this book stirs up in me. Like, I hate that I like this book because the characters are so destructive and toxic, but like, I was there for it. I ate that shit up. So we have the exact same feelings on that book. And then finally, sadly, Red Rising. I just don't know why I could not get along with this book. It honestly broke my heart. I was completely shocked with my own self, my own taste, why I could not get along with this book. So I think that Nicole and I have the same feelings on like romance and high fantasy, but maybe just not dystopian. I do plan on reading a couple more books in the romance genre that Nicole and I have talked about. One of them is The Summer That I Turned Pretty. I do plan on reading that next month. And then there's a few books by Jennifer L. Armentrout. We are both big fans of the Lux series. Overall, this was an awesome study. I do plan on doing more like this. I literally have 3 more in the near future I have planned to kind of read for. If you like these, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.